fashion shows, including African
We know as Canadians that we have entered and are presently entering a new phase in the history of our country. And without you and I, without our multicultural communities making a contribution, this country will not ever be the same. For that experiment, we want to thank all those who are encouraging us to come forward and to make our contributions. Thanks to Diversity for bringing forward and encouraging this new country called Canada, which has unlimited opportunities for those who want to grasp it. And finally, what could be better as public policy? I'm looking at John right now. What could be better as public policy than to open up governments and all institutions to try to ensure that every one of our children will not only have the opportunity, but will have the right to make his or her contribution in this new country called Canada. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Ms. Karen Stintz, City Councilor and Chair of DDC, and now a candidate for Toronto Mayoral race coming up. Please welcome Ms. Karen Stintz. Ms. Olivia Chow, former member of Parliament, and joining us together as a candidate for Toronto Mayoral race. Ms. Olivia Chow, please welcome her. Now we bring the lady and bring the gentleman. Mr. John Tory, business and community activist. Please join me together welcoming all three candidates today. Welcome all of you. I'll be the moderator for today. My name is Ajay Tandon, and I look forward to some amazing responses from all three. Let me just give you some house rules here, ladies and gentlemen. We will first give each candidate the floor to speak for a few minutes about their policies and their vision for the future of Toronto, the most vibrant urban city in Canada, how they're going to organize, what they look forward. And then we will have a chance to ask some questions. I have a few questions to ask, and I'll leave the floor after that for you to ask a few questions. And this is not, we are going to do it in alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with Mr. John Tory to come up forward to give his views, and he will have approximately 7 to 8 minutes to go with that. I know we had 10 minutes, so I'm trying to cut down on that.
I have to go. I have a commitment at 4. Take care.
Ms. Madam. Ms. Karen Stintz has another appointment coming in, so she would like to take the lead urgent. So we apologize for that, but we're going to give the floor to Mr. John Tory.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to be here today. They asked us, the organizers did, to address our vision for the city, and I'll spend a moment on that, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of diversity and how my own track record as a citizen, as a private citizen, has indicated my interest in this for a long time. I have talked about a city that I would like to continue to build upon that becomes even more livable, affordable, and functional. And by livable, I speak principally of what I think is the most important issue that is on the minds of people across Toronto in this election campaign, which is public transportation, traffic, and transit. I think that we have really let down the side for really decades now in terms of not doing what we should have done as the city grew to make sure that its public transportation system and that its traffic management kept up with the growth of the city. And so I have talked about having 3 things that I would do specifically under that heading. First is traffic management. I have a detailed plan that's set out on my website at johntory.ca. Secondly, I will proceed with the Scarborough subway. It's been approved by all 3 levels of government, and I think we will make it a good long-term investment for the City of Toronto. And then thirdly, I have a SmartTrack transit proposal which takes 90% of them existing GO train tracks that are laid down across the city now, and electrifies those and has those converted to use to move people around on frequent, high-speed trains, daily, two-way, all day, within 7 years. And that's compared to some of the other alternatives that are being presented that could take as long as or longer than 17 years. So those are the things that are livable that I cite as my priorities and are affordable. I have committed very simply to keep property taxes increases at or below the rate of inflation. I will do that in part by identifying ways in which we can run the government more efficiently. And I think when you read in the papers and see on television, item after item after item, the Sony Center, the Nathan Phillips Square upgrading, the Union Station upgrading, and so on, that go millions and millions of dollars over budget, you can be convinced, as I am, that there are better ways to run the city government, and that those have not been pursued or dealt with successfully during the time of the last 4 years when Mr. Ford has been in charge. So we'll identify that inefficiency as a part of running a better city government and keeping property taxes at or below the rate of inflation. And another priority that I think I'll be well equipped to address is that of attracting jobs and investment to the city. I have experience as a business leader. I have worked for the last couple of years doing a study together with others on how to attract investment to Toronto and how we can cooperate together to get that done. And that is what I will do as the city's chief salesperson to attract more jobs and investment. Because after all, what we need here are more jobs for the people who are coming from other countries, still 100,000 a year, thank goodness, or so, but also for a lot of the people that are here, including a lot of young people who are without jobs. And then finally, I reference a functional government. A functional government to me starts with the fact that we have to have the members of City Council and the Mayor working with one another. I think we've seen in the last couple of years a situation that can't continue. I don't think Mayor Ford is able to continue to work with councillors anymore. He seems to have run out of the string on that, and I think he seems unable to work with the other levels of government. They don't even seem to return his calls anymore. And I think in order to get big things done in the city, whether it has to do with transit or to do with housing or anything else, we know that we need the support of those governments to have that government operate, our government, city operate functionally. So I think if you listen to this, you would conclude correctly that the problems in Toronto don't stem from the people. Rarely do problems with government stem from the people. They stem from dysfunction of one kind or another in government. I think that to use the city's own motto of diversity being our strength, it is true that the diversity of our people and the people with all of their different qualifications, educational and otherwise, are a huge strength of the city. And the government hasn't necessarily worked for the people to allow us to exploit those strengths and to make sure we remain a place where opportunity is number one on the list. We can't have opportunity available to people if there's no way to get around. We can't have opportunity available to people if there's been an inadequate job creation, especially for those young people who find themselves marginalized or isolated within the city for one reason or another, including transportation. We can't run the kind of government that is going to allow opportunity for people and keep their taxes low if the government is wasting money. So we are a model, as was said earlier on by Tony Ruprecht, for the world to look at, but the government hasn't yet fully taken up its leadership role in managing its own affairs properly, setting its own priorities properly, producing results for people, but also taking up the challenge that is presented by diversity. And I did want to say that I spent quite a bit of my time when I wasn't in politics, and I wasn't going around making political statements trying to win votes, but as a private citizen, I became, for example, co-chair of the Diversity Project with a woman by the name of Ratna Omnawar. And what we did there was we commissioned studies year after year. So we looked at the health system, we looked at the legal profession, the justice system, we looked at government and political appointments to shine a light on whether or not the diversity that is our population today was taking its proper role in the leadership of all of those different areas of life, because we felt it was very important to get the facts on the table first, and then to work with people in business and labor and government and elsewhere to see what we could do about it, because we kind of knew what the numbers would say. And indeed, when we looked at those things, we found there is that the face of the justice system, the face of the healthcare system, the face of our governments and public bodies do not yet represent the population that they serve. In some areas, not even close. So one of the kinds of things we did, we would often have people tell us, well, gee, we'd really like to appoint more diverse people to boards and agencies, but we don't know how to find people who are qualified. So the Diversity Project set up a talent bank that had 1,500 or 2,000 names in it, and actually 500 appointments were made out of that talent bank to bodies and agencies and boards to help those boards become more representative of the population that they serve. We found that there were not enough people running for public office who were from diverse backgrounds. What did we do? We set up a school that helped people understand what it was like to run for public office and had people in, including myself and others. Olivia may well have been there too, I'm not sure. But a lot of us were asked just to come in and talk about what it's like to be a candidate, what does it involve, and make people feel more comfortable with the task of stepping up to run for public office. So these are things that have to be done. We also examine business and the role that it has to play in encouraging people from diverse communities to become entrepreneurs, looking at ways in which we could encourage diverse-led businesses to do business with our governments and with other private sector partners. So I've chosen not to be a spectator on these kinds of things, and I can assure you I will be a leader, not a spectator as mayor. I will lead by example in terms of trying to lead the city government and work with my council colleagues to reduce the kinds of barriers that still exist, whether they be linguistic barriers or access to procurement opportunities or training or the appointments that I spoke about earlier. I think we have to bring far more labor and business organizations on board to make sure that we are offering opportunities to people who may not have as ready access to those opportunities through the usual channels. Bring some of the opportunities to them as opposed to waiting for them to show up. And of course, I think the most important thing you can do as mayor is to continue to advocate. Continue to advocate. Make this one of those things that you stand up and speak out about as the mayor, because you're given the privilege of having that platform to make a difference. So I'll stop there and leave the time for the questions that was allocated after Olivia spoke. I think that's the way it's going to work, and we'll look forward to having that chat with you in a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tory. May I request Ms. Olivia Chow to please join us in giving her views and her vision for the city, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Good. So my vision of the city is what I see here. A vision of diversity. A vision of a city where all its citizens can live in dignity and respect. A city that is fair and just, and where we can all stand proud. It is a vision my parents shared when we immigrated when I was a schoolgirl. It is a vision that sustained us, as it did so many other families through all the years of struggling. It was difficult. We struggled to find a job, struggling to fit in, struggling to learn a new language, and really starting from the bottom. It is a vision that has sustained so many people of all colors and cultures, races and religions, ages and genders and orientation, who call Toronto home. And so many has worked so hard for so long to establish our city's leadership in diversity. Now, in the past 4 years, with Rockford's agenda and behavior, we have been losing ground. We need to build a better city with a new mayor. A mayor who shows respect for all our citizens and pride in our diversity. A new mayor who knows that we must stop the return of racism, sexism, and homophobia that we thought were buried in the past. A new mayor who knows that describing an African Canadian with a slur beginning with an N is just not acceptable, and it is harmful. So is describing Italian Canadians with a slur beginning with W. That is offensive. Or describing Portuguese or Spanish Canadians with a word beginning with D. Or it's demeaning or objectifying women with lewd, offensive, abusive, sexist, and hurtful comments. That kind of disrespect has no place in my vision of Toronto or in yours, even in the office of the mayor, especially in the office of the mayor. Being in a drunken stupor is no excuse. A lack of sobriety does not create demeaning, bigoted, harmful, ignorant behavior. it simply exposes it. And it is an ugly sight. And this does not reflect the vision of our city, for our city, nor do the actions that we have seen from Rob Ford in the past 5 years, where he has moved us backwards with a conservative agenda. Actually 4 years, but he was, almost the same before he became a mayor. He said he's a friend of diversity because he spent time occasionally in low-income neighborhoods, but at the same time, Rob Ford cut services to those neighborhoods. His conservative agenda has hurt families with higher user fees for playing fields and recreational activities, and attacks on libraries and after-school programs, and higher TDC fares for less service and more crowding. That is not acceptable. And this false hope that underground rail for Scarborough is somehow a solution. And he wasted 4 years of time talking about it and doing nothing. So we have seen also youth unemployment that has gone up to over 1 in 5 of our young people not being able to find a job, losing hope for the future. So this conservative agenda is out of touch with the values and vision we celebrate and share. So through my life as a public official, as a school trustee of the school board, I worked on curriculum to make school and education relevant for immigrants. I worked on restreaming to provide equality of opportunity for all neighborhoods, low income or high. I worked on heritage language programs so kids can learn their parents and grandparents' native tongue. I worked on getting 911, calling 911. When you call 911, it's speaking 140 languages, so no matter what language you speak, you get the service that you need. I also worked on employment equity, legal marriage, infant settlement services and advocacy for children and young people, for people of different abilities, for advancement of women. All of those things are so important because the right for all to live in dignity and respect is non-negotiable. So, if I become your new mayor, we will have a very realistic plan that we immediately improved on bus services, improved on putting shovel in the ground in Scarborough, and building long-term for the subway system to relieve the young subway line. I have made other ideas. I look forward to debating and talking about it with you, as one of which is that has a lot to do with what we're talking about today, is to bring together all agencies that are working to promote the city. We call it Global Toronto, so that we can get all our voices, all our expertise, all our knowledge of other countries together and put diversity to work and market our city to the world. Those are exciting ideas, including putting all our energy to support our new entrepreneurs, newcomers, so that they can set up their businesses faster and easier. Let's create jobs for our young people. Let's make sure their kids have after-school activities, and let's do all of that by coming together and by saying loud and clear, our city, we need our city that is fair, diverse, and progressive. Our city, which is a better city for all. That's my vision, and that's why I'm running to be your new mayor. Thank you.
Traffic. And coming next year, we are heading towards Pan Am Games as well. How, as a new mayor of the city, you will lead to resolve that problem from the city and the minds of the residents? Ms. Olivia Chow.
me to answer here or over there? Okay. I'll stay here then. There's two parts to it. Sorry, there's two parts to this answer. My better traffic plan has several components. Number one, it makes no sense for us to close a lane in one of the streets and then allow other alternative routes to be closed or under construction. So let us establish a policy that said if the arterial road is being reconstructed or under repair, if we're closing a lane there, no other lanes in the area, in that alternative area, should be closed. Okay? That's a clear policy. That will have less traffic jams. That would mean that we wouldn't see the Gardner closing one lane, and then you have the Lakeshore also being closed from time to time. That makes no sense. Number two, we need to have a fairly clear policy that said that those roads that are being dug up by utility companies or by telecoms like Rogers or Bell, when they fix the road, it needs to be in perfect shape. Right now, they're not being checked. As a result, one of the reasons why we have so many potholes is that they are not being repaved properly. Number three, we need to make sure that that we have give financial incentives for construction companies that are now closing lanes for construction purposes, that they can do it faster. It makes no sense to have to charge a flat rate. We need to charge more if a lane is closed longer. In Chicago, when a lane is closed for 1 day versus 1 year versus 2 years, the amount escalates. So there's a financial incentive to free up the lane as quickly as possible. Here in Toronto, it's a flat rate, and that makes no sense. Those are some of the ideas on dealing with traffic jams. I forgot to ask you, Mrs. Moderator, how much time do you have for each of the answers?
Usually have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay, all right, I'll stop. I will make it shorter next time. And we'll talk about the transit plan.
I want you to repeat the question again.
No, I understand the question. And, it's one of those areas, folks, where if you look at the plans that Ms. Chow, I think Mr. Saknaki, there's some similarities between them, and that's a good thing, because it means that I think we've identified some things that should be done. And I guess one of the questions I have oftentimes when it comes to things like handling construction better is, why hasn't it been done before now? I think those are questions you might ask those people who've been on the city council, including Mayor Ford, as to why they do tear up the Gardner and the Lakeshore at the same time. This is basic management, and it can be fixed fairly easily just by people talking to each other. I have some other ideas that have gone with that construction idea that Olivia talked about, synchronizing the traffic signals. I've been to the place where it runs, and they've got an old computer running some of the old signals and a new computer running some of the new signals, and even the new computer is not something that anybody would be using in any house or any business because it's quite old. But that's the kind of stuff we do. We let our infrastructure run down. And whereas we were the first city in North America to have traffic signals on a computer, now we're kind of one of the laggards in terms of having old technology, when some of the best technology in the world is being developed right here at the University of Toronto. I put in my plan buses being able to have separate bus queue jumping lanes that help them get in and out of traffic, and zero tolerance for parking in major streets during the day. But the other thing we have to do is give people an option not to use their car, to leave it at home. And that's one of the reasons why I believe so strongly in the express buses that I talked about. They're going to allow more people to get downtown faster on bus lines from places that presently have an adequate service with fewer stops. And of course on the SmartTrack program, which will provide the transit link from Etobicoke all the way through Union Station to Scarborough. It will be built and ready and running in 7 years, and will provide people with that option of using transit to get to and from work and get to and from home in the 7 years on a cost-effective basis, using electric trains and existing GO train tracks for the vast majority of them. And I think those two things have to go together to provide some relief from what I agree is our biggest problem in the city right now.
Thank you, Mr. John Tory. Our next question coming in is, we'll start with you for the answer, and next we'll go to Ms. Olivia Chow. If the future of the city and the country is youth, our young professionals going to university and colleges are today struggling with the concept whether they have made a right decision to take that particular course or line of business or work, because they know they do not have jobs. How can we give strength to the decision making of youth and assure them that this city is ready for them as we move forward?
Well, I think that actually is one of the most important questions facing the city and facing all of our country, and a lot of countries around the world, quite frankly. But I think there are three things I would talk about that I think have to be done. First of all, it does start, I would say, not only in schools, but also at the home supper tables. I think there have been a lot of instances in schools where, even up to and including this day, that we are not allowing the full range of options to be put in front of students, and proper information about what our expectations are, knowing we can't entirely predict the future as to what the trends are for jobs that will be in demand going forward. And I think that we really have let down students. I think we've been doing it for decades, actually, but I think it's more important now as the world of work is changing so rapidly. I think that at the supper table, it's more a matter of parents being much more open-minded about what their kids might do. A lot of parents from all kinds of backgrounds discourage their kids from taking up a trade, when in fact this is one of the most rewarding, secure, needed kinds of work, and we're short of people who are in the skilled trades in Toronto and in Canada. So I think that's important as well. Secondly, I think we have to attract more investment to Toronto. I just completed a study. In fact, I had to resign just before we submitted our report to the government. Actually, no, that one we did submit the report. It was the youth unemployment when I had to resign just before in order to run for office. But the one we did on attracting foreign investment to Toronto, we saw that while we've done okay, we are slipping in the world rankings in terms of attracting foreign investment, and our efforts are not as effective as those of many other major cities like London and Miami and even Montreal. And so we've got to do a better effort working with all the cities around us, and Mississauga and Vaughan and Durham and Toronto and so on, all have to go together to places around the world and say, together, we have the best universities, the best workforce, better transportation. That's why we have to build transit and attract people to great jobs and investment here in Toronto. And then finally, I think we have to put a specific focus on those who are harder to employ. That's the task force I had to resign just before we submitted our report to the Ontario government. And so I've worked with other people and listened to young people who are unemployed. There are 83,000 young people in Toronto right now between the ages of 16 and 24 who are not in school and not working. And we have to convince business and labor and others to step up and give them an opportunity so they can learn. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be crucial to making sure those kids don't end up in a kind of dead-end situation as they get older. So those are just three things I would name in response to your question.
Need me to repeat the question?
No, I heard about it here. I talked about it briefly in my opening statement. We need to ask company to sign a community benefits agreement. It's been done in LA, in Vancouver, and in Toronto. In Regent Park, when we revitalized Regent Park, 500 jobs were created. So the company signed these agreements and said that they will hire young people, and some of those are apprenticeship programs. So it's a win-win for companies. A win because the company are able to train the next generation of workers. It's good for the young people because they get training and they get a good job. It's good for our economy. So let's use the city's infrastructure and capital budget, and let's use that money and have it work for us. In the coming 10 years, the capital budget of the city is $18.6 billion. And any contracts that are over $50 million, what we should do is to ask companies to sign these community benefits agreements so they can hire some of our young people and train them. That is a win-win situation, been done in Vancouver, where we can do a lot more. That's number one. Number two, a lot of young people that have a lot of exciting ideas. They need on how to start a business. They are full of energy and creativity. We need to make sure there's mentorship programs, partnering them with folks and others that are successful in business that may have retired now. This kind of mentorship partnership program, I've seen it work. We can do a lot more. And also, the city also fund some of the employment services, whether it's the old names is Jobs Corps or YDS. There are different youth employment agencies that can help young people find jobs. Those are some of the elements that we can do to create better jobs for young people. Most important, though, is our small businesses. Our small businesses is the backbone of the local community, local economy. We need to make sure we keep their property tax low and cut the red tape so it's easier for them to start and continue their businesses.
Thank you. We have the third question, and that will be the final question from me, and we will leave the floor after that. I have a question already. The third question is cleaning the city inside out, meaning the image of the city today has been tarnished all over. People coming from diverse backgrounds today are looking at Toronto as a city to come and live in. But the image of the city speaks different. How, as a new mayor, are you committed, both personally and socially, to ensure the image is clean, to showcase the world that Toronto is the best city in the world to live in?
Let me start.
No, it's okay.
Olivia Chow.
In my opening statement, I talked about many of the offensive statements by our existing mayor. And yes, our image has been tarnished internationally, but we're better than that. We collectively, as a city, are filled with people that have progressive ideas, that support diversity. Think about it. Our city is unique in this world. There's nowhere else in this world where the people that are from around the world coming together, living in the city, all getting along harmoniously. So we need to build on that strength. We need to make sure that you have a mayor that understands that strength, that you have a mayor that celebrates that strength, and in all its form, whether it's through city grants programs, in the mayor's participation, in various parades, in various flag raising, all of those things give a signal that we need to be proud of our diversity. After all, when we said diversity is our strength, it should not just be a slogan. That's why I said that we need to pair new immigrants, new entrepreneurs with existing business, because the existing business will learn how to export, and the newcomers can teach the existing business on their home country, and newcomers can also learn how to establish their own small businesses. So it's a win-win, and soon enough we will restore pride in our city, whether we live in.
I think there are three things that threaten our reputation going forward. And number one is continued service in office of Mayor Ron Ford. I believe he should resign. I've said this previously, and I say it again today, and I think regardless of when he comes back or what he's doing, he still should resign. He's shown disrespect for the people who elected him. He's shown disrespect for the office he holds, and I won't catalog his behavior. You know all about it. And I just think it is inconsistent with, at the very least, inconsistent with the values that we share together and the kind of image we want to portray for our city. I think the second thing that poses a threat is the lack of economic opportunity. There is still a lot of economic opportunity here, but I think if it becomes known that people are going to come here from around the world, or just even look at this as a place to invest, and people feel somehow that they'll be stifled in investing here for creating jobs and being able to carry on business, or that it just isn't an attractive place to invest, even, for example, because of our traffic congestion. In a world ranking that came out just about 2 months ago, we slipped down a notch. We're still in 5th place, but we slipped from 4th to 5th. And why did they say we did? Because of traffic congestion. And so I think a perceived lack of economic opportunity, lack of ability to do business here is a threat. And the third thing I would say is, especially because we're speaking to a conference about diversity, is a perceived lack of inclusion. And that applies to anybody. I mean, I think it's seen that people come here seeking opportunity, and properly so, because this is a land of opportunity in the whole world, but they can't get plugged in. And it's back to those studies we did, showing that in positions of leadership and showing that access to even the most basic of jobs is often more difficult for people who have come from elsewhere. We've got to resolve that, and I've devoted a great part of my life as a citizen and as a volunteer in the last number of years to trying to address that, because I believe it's so important to our reputation, but also to the well-being of the people who we invited to come to this country.
Thank you. Thank you, both speakers. Thank you very much. We have questions from the floor. I've got Ms. Rosemary Thadley, President of Ontario Black History Society. She has questions to ask. Okay, you can ask with the mic coming to you. Yeah, you can raise your hands and the mic will come to you. We will have room for at least 4 questions, and we'll have to take a pick on that because one is running on time. Yeah, can we have the microphone on that running, please?
Okay, great. Thank you very much, candidates, for coming to this diversity conference so that we can hear your views. I am Rosemary Sadler, the president of the Ontario Black History Society, the only provincial heritage organization dedicated to the study, preservation, and promotion of Black history and heritage. Thank you. And the reason that I mention that is because it ties into a question that isn't completely part of the city purview, but is nevertheless something that I think is might be on the minds of some of the voters. One has to do with senior care. I picked this up in a long-term care facility. Let me just go over quickly for you all. 93% of residents in our long-term care homes, which are not solely a city purview, but 93% of them have chronic dementia. Chronic diseases that require enhanced care. 6 out of 10 live with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. And 4 out of 10 long-term care homes in Ontario do not meet modern guidelines. Now, with that information on one side, the information, I'm coming to my question, the information on the other side is that there's a significant need in Canada, in Ontario, in Toronto, for a center for African Canadian history. And I wonder if by chance in your work recently, you come to know about possible spaces in the city of Toronto that might lend themselves to the creation of a long-term care home / Center for African Canadian History, or 2 separate functions so that we can enhance lives for both of these very important populations. That's sort of the question. And I appreciate that it's not solely a city or municipal purview, but the city will have some influence on these particular aspects.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rosemary. Close to this, please.
Thank you. Rosemary, thank you. Thank you for the work that you and the OPHS do year in and year out, including Black History Month every year, winter. I think they are 2 different things, but you know, in some respects, some of the successes we've seen in the city over the years have come from establishing community centers, sometimes with very broad-reaching kinds of purposes, which could include a museum, it could include a long-term care facility or some kind of facility to help with seniors. It could also include, just a space where people from different communities in the city can come together. And so there have been successes there. I would say that the role of the city in that instance would be that the city could offer locations, because there are now schools that are considered to be, when I say surplus, they're schools that are not in use anymore. They're buildings with literally heating and maintaining that are not in use at all. And we might be able to find a use for that, whether it was a combination of a long-term care type facility or the kind of museum you talk about. I don't know if that's feasible. But I think it is possible for the city to step up with the school board and say we have various pieces of land and various buildings that could be possibilities for this kind of thing. I think the community will have to step up and say as well they're going to vote, as has been done successfully by a number of the communities that make up Toronto, to raise some money and gain some support and decide on a mission that's going to be agreed upon by as many people in the community as possible. I will say that the whole business of senior care and the lack of a real strategy to deal with dementia and Alzheimer's that you mentioned is a serious shortcoming that is not at the doorstep of the city, though I don't think any government can kind of throw up its hands and say it has nothing to do with us. I think there are going to be something in the order of 500,000 people across the country, which means probably 100,000 here in Toronto and Southern Ontario who are going to be affected by this by 2020, and that is going to overwhelm a system that's already struggling to keep up. So I think that is something that's a separate item for very acute attention by those of us who are mayor or holding any other public office.
Thank you. Ms. Olivia Chow.
There are 5 ways the city can do to support seniors. This City of Toronto has 10 seniors homes. We can do more. Right now I'm working to help a Korean group to save their nursing home, and we can partner with different organizations, different assisting nursing home, to give them more support and training and workers, etc. We right now have seniors housing through TCHC. We can do a lot more because the waiting list for seniors housing is like 10, 15 years. And some of the seniors say, my God, I might not be alive before I can get some kind of affordable senior housing. So we can do more on that front. On public health, right now there are dental clinics that goes to nursing homes. We need to make that happen more often. Or some of the nursing homes don't use it. They go to nursing home to help identify the dentures, to make sure that the seniors have teeth that can be taken care of, or they do screenings. Those are things that we can do more of through the public health service. Through the grants, the City of Toronto have programs that support seniors, such as St. Christopher Community Centre, St. Christopher House, for example, that have daily programs for seniors. We can do more of that. And homemaker services, the City of Toronto used to have, and still do a little bit on homemaker services. So some seniors that need a bit of support, they need to get into a nursing home, can get a bit of homemaker services. So all those 5 ways combined can provide a lot more support for seniors. And I think I do not have time to answer the question on Center for African History. Maybe someone else can ask that, so we get another 2 minutes on that.
Thank you. Next question coming from the lady there. If you can just keep the questions a little bit short, give your name and the question, and this time it will be Ms. Olivia Chow to start first.
Okay, my name is Pascal. I work in the arts and performing arts. And I would like to ask a direct question in regards to inclusivity and diversity when it comes to our levels of government. How do you see in the near future that we're going to see more a diverse and inclusive government structure where we're embracing the cultures that exist in this fine province of ours? How do you see your particular party making some kind of headway for the future of the province and for the city of Toronto?
Sorry, you're talking about diversity as far as employers, employees,
Exactly, I suppose the government structure.
on service, and or are you talking about
Take it the way you want to, take it and embrace it.
Sorry?
Up to interpretation, take it and embrace it.
Sorry, I mean, your question is that how each employer can make sure that there is diversity at all levels.
Levels of government can now start become inclusive.
Of diversity, okay.
Diversity, okay, here we go. So there are different aspects of it. When I made sure that 9/11, when you call 911, that it speaks on 40 languages, Why? Because we want to make sure the services are as diverse as possible. For that to happen, we need the employees that serve the public to reflect the people they serve. Whether it's parks and recs and the police and the firefighters and the nurses and the librarians and, the childcare workers. And one way is to have, to work with our diversity office. Uma does a lot of good work. She needs a lot more support. She needs a committee and team to support her. She needs political will. And she needs leadership from the top, which is from the mayor's office. And that has been missing in the last 4 years. She does a very good work, but there are other councillors that want to come in and support her work. There are outside community experts, people that know how to make diversity cut through in all levels of what the city does, whether it's people, the service, and all of that. But what it takes is political will and bringing all the people that have the expertise, have them work with us. Whatever committee we want to call it, take that expertise, bring it together with the political will, then diversity will be real, we'll see it from the service, we'll see it from the people that serve the public.
Thank you. Mr. John Tory.
Well, this is something that as I mentioned earlier, I worked very hard on as a private citizen, because I felt it was key to what Tony Rupert talked about, to the success ultimately of this community we're trying to build here that is very different and very special. And so when you look at public sector leadership, for example, you see that we have in the provincial level 10% of the leaders are people representing visible minorities. In the municipal government, it's only 4%. And so what did we recommend at the time when we undertook this study, looking at the public sector and figuring out those numbers? And I think that's the first thing you have to do, by the way, is measure and count and bring to the attention of the public that you have 4% municipal government leaders versus a number of almost 50% of the population who are themselves visible minorities. And so what did we say at the time? Well, we said you have to measure and report so people know. And then you have to work on the recruitment and promotion processes inside the city government to make sure that you have people in these jobs and that the recruitment and promotional processes encourage them and incent them to apply and to be selected. You have to train and coach and mentor people who are high achievers who come from visible minority backgrounds to make sure they have a good chance to get out of these jobs. And then have a lot more of the kind of informal networking and support that is needed to help encourage these people to create role models. And so the tools have been recommended before. We probably wrote this report 3 or 4 years ago with Ryerson and put the tools forward. And I think we've begun the process of measuring these things now and reporting on them and shining a light on them. But we've now got to move forward to act on these things. And I think there's progress being made, but perhaps much slower than it should be. So I think it starts with measuring, and then it comes to providing support and incentives to make sure you see people moving into positions of leadership in the public service, and places like, say, the fire service. They just started a project now to try and diversify their membership because they realized that they weren't representative of the population they serve. The police have done a better job. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. The next question, we have 2 more questions from the class. We'll have one here and one from this gentleman who's been raising. So after that, we'll have closing statements. Please go ahead and keep it short. Give your name and the question.
My name is Ken Bruzio. I am publisher of the Culture Chest e-newsletter. I'm familiar with both, and I welcome you both here. And I give you deep respect for having made yourself available to us, because others did not stay. The fact is that we are talking diversity and we are talking employment for youth. Before I deal with that, I just want to bring up a sharp reminder to you. Sometime ago, 10 years ago, 20,000 people coming on the GO train were stuck in the Union Station. 20,000 people could not go to their jobs because a man had taken hostage on Front Street. 20,000 people sat in the GO station unable to go to their work. There's one station ahead of it at Danforth in Maine, where the trains could have gone and let the people go by TTC to their jobs. 10 years ago, nobody in the city has done anything about it so as to integrate the systems or anything that this can do. At the same GO station, the CN sold the tracks. CN rebuilt their tracks. And they are the ones doing the go into bringing traffic along the lake shore into the city. The GO had to go and rebuy the locations because they were sold to developers. They had to go and rebuy track to put a third track in to accommodate track.
I just asked the question now.
No, I will not ask a question on that. I'm simply going to say that having heard it, they will know that it's important for these things to be addressed. Okay, my question comes from the diversity and integrity. 47 years ago, Caribbean people without instigation from Queen's Park or the city of Toronto started what is known as Caravan University. Government gives money everywhere. We now have over $438,000 as said by the government and Ryerson coming into the city now. It is less than would have come 6 years ago when the ownership, or rather the possession of the festival was transferred from the owners to some organization created by the city. For 47 years, nobody at City Hall or at Queen's Park have known that this is a big industry which we can move the so-called 420 or in reality $450 million coming in each year to $1 billion just like that. Today, you have the situation right now, the price situation, which has moved up from a weekend into 10 days. Caravana could be moved from just a week and a half into 3 weeks, and we can see adding $1.5 billion. My question is, will you do something about this to see that the people with the capability, we still have the founders. I was the first person in Canada to create a Trinidad-style mass band. In Montreal, I was brought from the university, Sir George, to come and inspire what would happen 5.5 months later. I did it, and I'm still working towards these things in the community out here. Very, very wide connection. Thank you. I just want to have you give me some kind of response that youth who are putting their energies and brought money into this place and their friends can get employment as a result of that festival. Thank you.
Okay, well, it seemed the question started off with focusing, and thank you for the question, sir, on the business of support for Caravan. And I will say, the city over many years, because I've been to Caravan over many years and been in the parade, it is one of the most important events that takes place, and frankly brings in huge numbers of tourists and other people from around North America that stay in our hotels and eat in our restaurants and so on. And it's a celebration as well of our Caribbean and other African Canadian communities. But I think the implication seemed to be at the beginning the city wasn't supporting it financially or otherwise, which it has consistently, I think, without exception, even under Mr. Ford's regime. I think the support for Caravan has continued. Should it be or could it be increased? I'm not going to sit here and get into that because it's not really, I can't really determine whether the amount that's given is adequate or inadequate. I mean, you can always hope for more. But I think the amounts given to Pride and Caravan are not radically dissimilar, and I think the same is true of the other governments. I will say that it has helped in the last number of years, and I know there have been some, I'll call them small political issues, and some legal issues even, to have the corporate community, and that's really what needed to happen as well. I was out actually making calls with the Caravan organizers years ago to corporations who backed away from being involved in it, and now you've got people like Scotiabank who've stepped up and provided some much needed money from outside of the government, because government funds are limited for these kinds of things. And I think that's probably where we should be out, and leaders of the community should be encouraging, including the mayor, the corporate sector and the labor movement and others to step up and provide support for Caravan so it can be better resourced. So I would just say to you that I would continue that support. I think it's an important event, one of our most important events in terms of tourism and celebration of our own community, and would look to provide leadership in getting support from an even broader section of the community, including business and others who have the resources to make the parade bigger and better.
Thank you, Mr. Tory. Ms. Olivia Chow.
Yes, remember Charles Roche and his friends started Caravana. The fact that you're using the name Caravana, not just the new name. It's been around for a long time. And I've played mass through the years, many, many years of amazing time. And that culture, that vibrancy, and the music and the beat is just phenomenal. Makes everyone proud of being a Torontonian, the greater Toronto area. Hotels are full, and mass band leaders gather in their area for months before the caravana starts to make the king and queen and all the costume. And it makes the young people very proud because they too are participating. And the junior caravana, junior festival are very successful. You know, I was the young kids, you know, struggling. It's just perfect. So the city already paid, you know, put a substantial grant on there. The Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, can do more with the band leaders because those are artists when they get together and make those beautiful, beautiful costumes. But you know what's really sad that I noticed last year and again this year? The Conservative government last year, this is the federal government I'm talking about, did not pay anything. Think about the GST that are being paid by these tourists that are coming into this country, this city, this country. Think about the revenue, the sales tax that are being gathered by the federal government, and not one penny goes to the Scotiabank Caribbean Festival. That's not excusable, right? So I think we need to, this year, 2015, we need to remind the government, the federal government, that they have quite a bit of money, and they need to join us, join the city, and celebrate that culture, celebrate music, and that amazing beat. And I think with a new mayor that can take on the leadership to grow, it will happen.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. We have room for last two final questions, and the gentleman again today, and then we'll wrap it up. Please give your name and let's keep the question short and sweet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Sadaf Zubi. For the last few years now, I've been working with developing small businesses. I've been working with developing small businesses, both in advisory and in a financial capacity. And my question is, in some of the American cities on the East Coast, Boston, Chicago, New York, for example, we've seen city-run incubator programs. So we've been talking today about empty space. Would it be possible, or what is holding the city back from actually putting some money towards both youth employment strategies and optimizing some of the thinking B-class office space downtown that's not being used in order to foster a more inclusive business development community, especially at the incubation stage for a lot of smaller companies that predominantly would be founded by and employ youth entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
I was very involved with the fashion industry incubators, and it was amazing. Yes, a building that I was the vice chair of the committee at one time when I was a city councilor. Very successful using incubators model, and these fashion designers came together and supported each other. The city giving them a helping hand. The city of Toronto, through the economic development team, starting different incubators in the city. That is their new mandate. So I invite you to talk to the economic development staff to say that, hey, this is now, you've seen it work for the fashion industry, you're planning to do all the other ones, why not make sure there's one that focuses on targeting on young people? It's an excellent idea. And let's make it work because it's been proven to work. Let's just expand that pilot project. Can't say it's pilot, it's now many years. It was in the late 80s, 90s, so I'm showing my age, that have been working for the fashion industry. So let's do more of that.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. Mr. Tory.
I think the answer to your question is there's nothing standing in the way short of a lack of will.
And I don't think it needs to be left entirely to the government. I visited one of these very same kind of incubators run by some entrepreneurs on College Street about a month ago. And they have a whole bunch of businesses, there's probably 6 or 8 businesses already in there. I think it's called Makes Work or Make Works or something like that, but it's on College Street. And so, for example, 2 women are running a complete workshop in the back there, a workshop with tools and saws and so forth. And they rent it out to people who come in and give courses there, people who come in and make things there, and so on. But their business is running this workshop and renting it out and making big money doing that. And they will leave it there, I guess, as long as they can, because it's not as easy to move, but they're within this incubator. I think that, you know, sort of back to the comments we made earlier on about the schools, I think the schools increasingly have to look at education as well, that kind of teaches people how to create a job as opposed to how to get a job, because I think increasingly people want to be self-employed. They have the opportunity to be self-employed, and these incubators help. Some could be run by the government or with government help, others can be run. This business on College Street is a business, and they charge, somehow they work it out that the rents are not so high that the business is strangled, but at the same time they charge enough rent to pay their costs. And there was another business in there where the guy's developing an app where you can sell your used cell phone, for example, and he's busy doing that. So I think that's important, as is microfinance, by the way. I think microfinance can be privately run, but it can also be, there can be projects, especially perhaps in some of the more isolated neighborhoods, where you encourage this with a bit of startup capital and incentive from the public sector, because this can help people as well. They can start a little tiny bit of capital to get their business going.
Thank you. Last question on the.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask a question. And I want to thank both candidates for being here today and the wonderful words that they have said. I have so much information to write for the next, I don't know how many months. My comment is, in this city where the motto is diversity our strength, there are so many racialized people who are educated, even at university level, who cannot find jobs. My brother here beside me has a bachelor's degree from the University of Toronto, a master's degree from Boise in education, and you wouldn't guess what jobs he's doing. He's working in a factory, being abused verbally. My question is, what would you do as Mayor of Toronto to ensure universal daycare? Because many racialized families, especially single support mothers, who want to go back to school, who want to have a life, who want to get out of that poverty cycle, cannot do it without safe, affordable daycare. And we've seen so many children die in unsafe daycare situations that I really would like to know what you would do as mayor to ensure that as many people as possible can get their lives back through being able to put their children in safe, affordable daycare. Thank you.
Well, I think the first thing that a mayor of Toronto can and should do, and maybe the most realistic thing, is advocate, because in the end, it is not anybody who tells you the city government is going to finance or operate universal daycare of the kind you're talking about is misleading you, because the city government doesn't have the resources to do that at the present time. So I think that if we want support for that, it's going to have to come from the other governments in part. I think that it's not. Well, I will advocate. I mean, I started, but for example, when it came to full-day kindergarten, one of the reasons I advocated it was principally about education, but it was also about the fact this was going to help some families, and so I have been a consistent advocate in favor of that, notwithstanding when I was in provincial politics, this wasn't consistent with what some other people that I was working with were themselves suggesting. I think we have to encourage the kind of action that we saw undertaken this week by the YMCA, who have created, I think it was 1,500 new child care spaces around the city, in the city of Toronto, to make available to families. But I think at the end of the day, you were also talking about the fact that there are people who continue to be denied opportunity or not able to find opportunity based on their postal code or their race or their status as an immigrant or not. And those are kinds of things that we have to address as well. And we've talked this afternoon about a number of things that have to be done in that regard. But I will certainly be an advocate for increased access to affordable childcare. But again, even the question of regulation, which you raised, is not done per se by the city government. They're one of the branches of government that do it, but the principal responsibility rests with the provincial government for license, the inspection of licensed childcare services. But I can't sit here and tell you in good faith that the city government itself can create the kind of universal childcare you suggested by itself.
Thank you, Mr.
Well, I'll take a slightly different tack because I believe the city can do a whole lot. I used to be the City of Toronto insurance advocate, and I piloted a project called First Duty. First Duty was piloted in 8 different schools and community centers to prove that we can do child-centered services that bring together community centers, libraries, and schools, and the after-4 programs to deliver the best service to children. And it led to a full-day kindergarten because it was so successful. But we can do more. That's what I do with younger kids. We need to do more for infants and toddlers. We need to do more for 6 to 12 years old, we call it middle years. Which is why if you were to see the first campaign promise that I put when I opened up my campaign office, what's the first one? Having really high quality after school programs for children. Because it's a form of daycare in many ways. It's because it's educational. It means that kids won't be at home by themselves. And it means hiring young people to teach children a skill. And these are the children. So that parents can then go to work and not worry to rush home at 3 o'clock and find some things for kids to do. And a lot of after-school activities are really expensive. It needs to be high quality, affordable, accessible, and yes, it can be made available when the city, the school board, the province of Ontario, and maybe the federal government all work together to deliver the best programs for our children. Because remember, children is the most important element, most important little creature for the city. That's why my campaign has said, let us put children and families at the heart of our city. When we create a city with the children at its heart, we'll have a great, wonderful city, safe, diverse, and successful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will now request you to give your closing statement for everyone to hear. It will be just for a quick 2 minutes, just to wrap it up from your side. Not 30 seconds, I like that. We'll start with you, Mr. Tory, this time. Please.
Well, I think we can go back to where we started. We do have a motto for the city that says diversity is our strength. And really the key for us going forward, I think in the years to come, is how we make that a reality, not just three or four words on a piece of paper or on various city documents. And I think that is going to come from all the things we've talked about today. Yes, we should try and do better for children. Yes, we should try and do better in terms of access to economic opportunity. We talked about small business and incubation. I started off talking about something that's fundamentally important to all of that in my view, which is public transportation and transit. And I put forward a plan that I think is going to make the biggest difference in the shortest time for the most reasonable amount of money to serve a lot of people faster and to eliminate what people, or to help with one of what people identify as one of the biggest problems we face, traffic and traffic congestion. But I think at the end of the day, that's important, as are the twin tasks of attracting investment and new jobs to the city and making sure that people are included. And that comes back as well to some of the efforts that I talked about that I made as a private citizen, and I think that increasingly have to be a highlight of government, shining a light on the facts and figures, taking measures itself to set an example of inclusiveness, taking opportunity to people as opposed to waiting for people to find their way to the opportunity when sometimes it's more difficult for them. And so I will continue to do that work as mayor that I did as a private citizen, because I think it is, to go back to Tony Ruprecht's remarks made before we came on the stage, it is going to be crucial to the success, not just in terms of how people see us going forward, but in terms of our actual ability to be a place of opportunity for all the people that have come here and continue to come here from around the world, which has been and will continue to be a great source of strength for us. And I think that will require new leadership for the city. We can't continue with the leadership we have. He has discredited himself, disqualified himself, in my view, from continuing to provide that leadership by things he said and done, and many things he just hasn't done. And so that is why I think we need a new mayor, and I'm offering myself for that job on October the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tory. Mr. Olivia.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sponsoring and moderating and volunteering to bring all of us together to talk about diversity, to talk about having a new mayor, talking about creating a better city for all of us. I want you to note one study recently that came out from Ryerson University. And this study looked at turnout rates in diverse community and across the city. You know what they found? They found that in areas where there's a high number of immigrants and diverse communities, the voter turnout rate is lower than other communities. Okay? You and I know that. It doesn't take a study to tell us that, but there is a study that proves it. So what we need is, of course we need a new mayor, of course we need to bring pride and dignity back to our city, but one way to do it, the only way to get a new mayor, is through democratic participation, through voting. So I call on you today to talk to your friends, to talk to your family members, from your churches, your newspapers, your various networks. Urge them to come out and vote. It does matter. It makes a difference. The last 4 years have proved it. So do participate. Make sure that we can take back our city, a better city for all, a city that is fair, diverse, and progressive. That is my vision. That's why I'm running to be your new mayor. Let's make it happen together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very good. That's very nice. I like that.
Thank you so much.
I don't support the logo, she's smiling everywhere.
Good luck.
Mr. Tory, do you have any thoughts on the debate?
Well, I thought it was a good discussion. Diversity is a hugely important issue economically, socially, culturally, and I thought it was a good discussion. I mean, it was less a debate than it was us perhaps sharing our perspectives, Ms. Chow and myself, and I'm glad we did it because I think you learn from listening to each other. I learned from listening to her, and I learned from listening to the questions from the audience, so I was delighted to be here.
So what's on the agenda for Toronto or the election?
Well, I mean, I think public transportation and transit are by far the biggest issues, and I've tried to address those in a constructive way with my SmartTrack proposal and proposals to get traffic moving and have express buses and so on. But there are many other things that go with that. I mean, you use that transit to connect people with opportunity, and so jobs is a big issue, obviously, for a lot of families. And I think getting the city government back on track and functioning properly is important. And that means both running a good government and not wasting money, but it also means getting along with the other governments and getting along with the members of city council to get things done for people. They want results. They don't care much about politics. They just want results.
How about the Ontario government? Catherine Lynch, did you even get along with her?
Absolutely. I had an excellent relationship with Ms. Wynne when we were in provincial politics together. I had said during the election that any of the three leaders would be a leader that I could work with, whoever formed the government. It's Ms. Wynne back there as Premier. I have an excellent relationship with her now, and I will going forward. And I think when people ask themselves a very important question, which is who do they think will best be able to get along with both Mr. Harper and the Conservatives in Ottawa and Ms. Wynne and the Liberals at Queen's Park, they probably will answer me. I believe they will, and I think that'll be an important issue for people to think about when we need money for transit and for housing in the election.
Really?
Last question.
You're looking forward to the return of Rob Ford?
Well, I mean, Mr. Ford, I hope he's got the help he needs. I think he should have resigned from office some time ago, and I still think he should. I think he's disqualified himself from serving effectively as mayor because of his behavior and the way he treated people in city council and elsewhere. But having said that, it's a free country, and he's got his name on the ballot, and so if he's coming back, then that's good, and I just hope he dealt with some of his issues.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job, Joe.